right now, in this very moment, you believe yourself to be a human being on the planet Earth in the third dimension, and you don't take these to be beliefs or assumptions, you take this to be reality. But actually, the third dimension is just an elaborate illusion. Similar to an optical illusion, but to a much higher degree. There actually are no dimensions. It would be more accurate to say that there are 0 dimensions. And when dealing with 0 or nothingness, since it hasn't manifested as anything in particular, it has infinite potential to manifest into anything. So you could say there are absolutely no dimensions, 0 dimensions, and there is the potential for infinite dimensions. And this world that you believe yourself to be in, this 3-dimensional world, is in a sense one of the infinite potentials that this 0 dimension can appear as. In the modern times, we have film, we have movies, we have images, and when you look at an image or you watch a movie, it seems to you almost like the characters are 3D. It seems like you can perceive the depth. It doesn't just seem like it's just a 2D screen. It seems like the characters are almost 3D. Even when people draw, it's possible to draw perspective, to draw in such a manner where it appears like some objects are closer to you than others. But again, it's just an elaborate illusion. You may agree with me that, okay, yes, it's possible to make an appearance seem 3D when it's actually 2D. But you may not agree with me when I say that the third dimension itself is an illusion. But it is. It's an illusion of the highest order. There is actually no length, no height, no depth. There's not a third dimension. There's not a second dimension, there's not a first dimension, and there's not a fourth dimension or higher dimensions, which some people theorize to exist. There's just the 0 dimension. And to help you visualize or imagine what the 0 dimension is, it would simply just be a single point. Single point. And in fact, that's actually what you are. If you actually look into the core of your being, you'll notice that you are just a point. If you look at any object, every single object has a center. And essentially, what is described in many of these spiritual traditions and many religions, this thing known as enlightenment or awakening, where one transcends Maya, or the illusory world, which is the third dimension. Essentially, all this is realizing that there are no dimensions at all. For a physical reality to exist, which you currently believe yourself to be in, you believe yourself to be in a physical reality right now. And for a physical reality to exist, there has to first be dimensions. But if there are no dimensions at all, then a physical reality cannot exist. And enlightenment is simply realizing that there are no dimensions. Or you could say that the only dimension there is the zero dimension. It is the 0 point. That's all there is. And when these yogis and enlightened masters speak about meditation, a lot of it is about becoming centered. You focus on your breath, or you focus on a particular object. What is focus? Focus is just making your attention one-pointed on a single point. And if you actually realize that when you become focused on something in particular, nothing else exists but that thing. This is what is often described as the flow state, when someone becomes so immersed in the activity that they're partaking in that they become absorbed and they become one with the activity. And for them in that moment, the rest of the world does not exist. And many may think that in the flow state, it's not that the world doesn't exist, it's just that they forget about the rest of the world. But actually, no. In that moment, they become conscious that the only thing that exists is this here and now, which is outside of time, which has no dimensions to it, which has no particular qualities, which is always shape-shifting. It has no form. If I were to ask you the question, what does life look like? What does life feel like? Whatever answer you give me would be inaccurate, because life isn't anything in particular. Because it has no qualities, it must always be shape-shifting. Because the moment it freezes and holds a particular form, then it would no longer be nothing, it would be something. It would no longer have no attributes, it would have particular attributes. So, even though you believe yourself to be perceiving a material world within the third dimension, which has particular qualities, that's actually a misinterpretation. You actually aren't perceiving anything at all. Really, all that there is the 0 point or nothingness, which is shapeshifting and iterating in infinitely different forms every millisecond. Not even every millisecond, because even a millisecond has a particular length. But as I said, the 0 dimension doesn't even have length or depth or height. It's instant. It's so direct. And that's why it feels like it's happening to you. You feel alive. You feel like you are here. But there is no you. There's just it. And since it is so direct, it feels personal when actually it's impersonal. There is simply just the field. An infinite field with no edge. And the field has no shape. Therefore, it must be shapeshifting. And your current idea of shapeshifting is actually corrupted, because every shapeshifter you've seen, for example in a movie or a TV show, every shapeshifter you've seen has an original form. You may have seen some kind of alien or a human which can shapeshift into any form, but then they always return back to their original form, which is a human or an alien. If they began out as an alien and then they shapeshift, they will always return back to their original form, which actually has a particular quality or attributes which can be defined and described. But this shapeshifter which I'm describing has no original form. So it's just infinitely shapeshifting with no original form to return to. That's what gives the illusion of time. It feels like there is a progression, but actually there is no progression. No distance has been traveled. You have not been living. There is just life. You have not been existing. There is just existence. If you would like a spiritual practice, I would break it down to this. Simply become aware of the point that you are. Just focus on your center. Become centered. Notice that point. That point which everything is converging to and which everything is appearing around and surrounding. This thing that you call the world is this apparent phenomena which surrounds this point which you call I. Focus not on the world, the fluctuating phenomena. Focus only on that point which has no attributes. It doesn't have a color, it doesn't have a sound, it doesn't have a name, it doesn't have any tangible qualities. It can't be described, yet it is there. That's what you focus on. Focus on your center. the nucleus of your being, the core. That thing which you have labeled as I, but actually it isn't even I, because I is just a sound, a word, a label, which is secondary. Focus on the primary. Focus on the center point of your own being. That's the only thing that is real. That's the only thing that is here. You just collapse back into the 0 point. And you remain there. You no longer allow yourself to apparently be pushed by the current. You no longer allow yourself to be swayed by the fluctuations which appear to surround you, which you have labeled as the world. You can allow the fluctuations to fluctuate. You can allow the current to keep on flowing around you. But you remain in the eye of the storm. You are it. And all that any fluctuations or appearances actually are just an expansion of that 0 point, of that 0 dimension which you are. It's just an expansion of 0, perfectly balanced between symmetry and asymmetry, which allows what appear to be objects and forms to arise as illusions.